Daniel, on the stage, you have given us some of the overview how the talent market or in general demographics in our market looks like. Would you give that for us in a couple of sentences? What is happening? How does that look now?
Sure. Wow. A couple of sentences. Okay, let's try this. The common theme is constant change and almost an acceleration of change as the world becomes more interconnected. So something happening on one side of the world can impact talent markets on the other. And this complexity is getting more and more entrenched. So it seems like there's one downward trend, one theme that's impacting talent markets and talent decisions after another. And I don't see any way out of this. It's just the way of the world. So we have to be prepared for change and give ourselves the right toolkits to be prepared for it.
So what are the main challenges for the workforce at the moment?
Wow, I think as a futurist, so I take a bit of a more long-term view, I think definitely the falling birth rates is a big one, and just general participation in the workforce. So there are lots of different factors for this, for people that could be working that aren't. But if we just focus on the falling birth rates, so if we take a really extreme example of South Korea, the fertility rate there is 0.8 children per woman. Now, you can maybe visualize that, but do you know what that looks like going forward? So I talk about 100 individuals, 50 men and 50 women. If we take 100 South Korean individuals, we can only expect at the current birth rate to see them have 40 children and only 16 grandchildren. So what questions does that arise for society, but also for the workforce when you only have 40 people trying to replace 100 and then 16 trying to replace the 40? So we have to get wise in terms of how we use technology, but also how we keep people engaged in meaningful work for longer. People are living longer as well, which is another converging problem too. So we want people to work in meaningful jobs because it can improve their quality of life as well. So yeah, we have to change a lot of the old ideas, I think, about work and what work is. But yeah, falling birth rates for me.
So basically, there are not enough of us to do the work. As we look different now, we are maybe older, and not always having the skills needed for the workforce or for the labor market, correct?
Yeah, the speed of change as well with the skills that are needed is seemingly accelerating too. So, older generations have to reskill and upskill as well. And this may be difficult for them. It's difficult for everyone when they think that they're tied their personality or identity to a certain role. But these shifts aren't new. Many of the jobs that existed 50 years ago don't exist today.
Yeah.
And even things that I do day to day, I can see them being taken over by automation, but it doesn't mean there won't be other things for me to do. It's just maybe part of the human psyche where you fear the future or fear a change. A change, so you kind of maybe resist it. But I'm all for people embracing the opportunities. But it's difficult as well to identify exactly what those will be. We kind of have to let things play out a little bit. I'm cautiously optimistic. You have to be about the future and things like AI. But I think things will get very different as well.
You've mentioned the things you do on a daily basis, and you are talent intelligence futurist. So tell me, what do talent intelligence futurists do on a daily basis?
Wow, good question. I don't think there's many of us, so I'll probably give you what we all do if it's just me. I spend a lot of time researching and staying up to date with like events and world events and using triggers from things I'm interested in, like falling birth rates or changing migration paths. And by staying informed, it just adds color and context to my day-to-day work. So my skill set is definitely in data and analytics. I've done that for 15 plus years. I'm relatively new into, I would say, the talent world. But, I took a lot of time to research and understand all of the issues that are ongoing. So you can only get so much from research. Sometimes you have to do your own research and use data. And there's so much data out there from governmental and world sources, OECD sources, Oxford Economics. There's loads of good stuff out there, but it's quite daunting to know where to look. So you have to spend a little bit of time number crunching, and then you start to see these patterns emerge. And so it's about finding these patterns, but then looking internally as well and seeing how they play out in my own company. So to see whether or not we're witnessing the same issues or maybe slightly different issues, because that's the thing. Trends in one space might not manifest in other industries or in other countries. We're all kind of in our own patterns of change. So for me, research, data, number crunching, but then speaking to people in the business and from wider sources as well. Listening to a lot of economics podcasts, understanding only so much, and then trying to relate it to my day-to-day work.
Mm-hmm. Talent intelligence in general, it's quite a new discipline, I would say. Yeah. And now when people start talking about it, I think that they interpret it in different ways. So how would you define talent intelligence?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think with anything new, people have their own views of it. My short answer would be, I feel it's the convergence of deep research, internal and external people data, with the idea of influencing decision-making in talent decisions in the business, so teams and leaders. Now, if you wanted a longer definition, I can point you to a very good book, Talent Intelligence by Toby Colshaw. I think it's probably one of the few books on it, so that's probably a lot more in there. But yeah, there's lots of different facets within talent intelligence. So whether it's location strategies, whether it's talent flows, talent sentiment, DEI insights, and my kind of role, which is kind of looking further into the future, how will all these things play out and converge? I think many of the definitions would add or remove some of those things. So yeah, after time, I think we'll probably settle on a good definition, but for now, I would say convergence of research and data.
Mm-hmm. Because I'm just thinking, in terms of broader overview or demographic analysis, I think it's quite clear what talent intelligence it is, because you have a lot of data, as you say, and you have to analyze that and then come up with some trends and or also, pointing directions to the future. But in terms of internal usage, so it's quite clear that talent intelligence is something that we use for talent attraction. So let's say, and you don't need special analytical skills for that. Even recruiters now use talent intelligence because we have so much of the data available on the market. Let's say the same LinkedIn, it provides you quite a lot of information, and you can do research on where the skill is available, which you need, or maybe the talent pool size, or just the preferences or some characteristics of the people that you need, and then how you can structure one hiring strategy or another, in which location, at what speed. And additionally, if you can't tackle some talent pool, then you can see what's related to that and maybe replace that with something else. Yeah. So basically, for recruiters, I think it's now not purely relying on hiring managers, but also, just doing their research and collecting the data. What other applications for talent intelligence do you see? I mean, going beyond the talent acquisition, maybe. How do you imagine that could be used in other disciplines of HR?
Yeah, I think it's about influencing senior leaders and changing minds. There are many ideas that are outdated. And if you last looked at a data set on a certain field a few years ago, it's probably out of date already. So challenging your preconceptions. Many of the data sources too, maybe they last updated, a few years ago, and think how much has changed since with the pandemic and the conflict in Europe. So it's outdated data. So we have to challenge our preconceptions with fresh data. And it's more than just data. Having been someone that's worked in the data space for 15 plus years, I've realized, probably took me too long to realize this, that people don't want data. They actually want to be told what to do with the data. So they need experts. And so if we can give direction about what this is telling them. I think, it's great that recruiters can flex these skills and understand, talent flows and use tools like LinkedIn. They've already got so much going on. So is that the best way and the best use of their cognitive load to be drilling around there? And also consider that none of these sources are perfect. I have a full disclosure here. I only signed up to LinkedIn this year. At my advanced age in career, it just wasn't for me. And there are plenty of people, and in certain countries that just don't use these tools.
Sure.
So, yeah. And also you're kind of limited and bound by what they are showing you and want to show you. What if you're experiencing something off-piste that no one's looked at before? You kind of have to have the autonomy to go and explore for yourself. So for me, it's definitely about influencing change in thought of what the scenarios are right now and preconceptions.
Mm-hmm. We also have had some of the thoughts or conversations that, with collecting more and more data, we can analyze the behavior of internal employees more accurately. Let's say an idea that, just by analyzing behavior on social media or internal communication channels of your employees, you can predict quite accurately when the person is going to leave the company or when somebody is going to leave for maternity leave or some other major events in their life. What do you think about this idea? Are we going to reach that point at some?
I think it's possible to get some way there, but you have to remember people are incredibly complex and bizarre creatures.
Fortunately or not.
Yes. So, patterns and people data, especially some of the strangest data in terms of, when you look at where someone has moved around in their career or the countries they've been to, unless you have absolutely everything about them, you don't understand that maybe they moved for a non-work reason. Maybe they moved for love. Maybe they moved because they've always fantasized about living in a certain country. It's nothing to do with the job. So making those connections wouldn't really work. It would only work at a huge, huge scale if you had millions and millions of individuals and you could broadly say, this broadly indicates that this will happen. I've got an easier way of predicting these things. Just having an environment where you can have open discussion with people. We always look for a different signal when there's a more obvious one. I talk a lot about do we really need degree requirements in jobs? Now, there are some jobs absolutely you do, like law or medical professions.
Yes.
I definitely think it's better to have a degree there. But many people just use it as a lazy proxy for the skills they actually need. So I'm very cautious of these lazy signals. Is there a better way? And a better way would be, creating an environment where people aren't concerned about having taking time off to have a child, which is a huge life event and would be helping everyone, or that they're not having a good time at work and they, maybe that you can't save them. Maybe they don't want to be saved, but maybe you can understand what you did wrong or if there was anything that was wrong or it just wasn't a natural fit, and then work backwards from there and understand, okay, that person didn't work out after 6 months. But if I look back at the job description, and I look at what we asked for and the skills, they're not doing that. So we're the problem, not the candidate or not the employee.
Yeah. Okay. So that's not an obvious answer from a talent intelligence futurist, but thank you very much for that.
Everything has to be data. I'm quite lazy in terms of people ask for dashboards and data, and a conversation often does it. And just say, what are you really looking for? Because this is super complex and I can spend weeks or months getting you a number that, some people just use numbers and data as a crutch and as a shield and as a bit of safety. But often they just need to know that, it's not an easy problem that they're facing, and just have someone else tell them this is a difficult situation and just talk it through. Data isn't always the answer.
Absolutely true. If you were to name one thing that makes you tick out of all the talent intelligence topic, what's the most exciting or interesting thing for you? Some tendency, some topic, some technology. What makes you, just...
Yeah, so there's so many things, and I just go down so many rabbit holes day to day. It maybe seems like a bit of a cliche, but generative AI for me is super exciting for loads of different reasons. Like, how disruptive will it be day to day in everyone's jobs? And then thinking of the most optimistic use case, the most optimistic scenario that we could expect of like full automation of work, and everyone is free from the drudgery of work and we can do whatever we want. And maybe many of us will just come back to the office and kind of play this role of being at work. But I think that's fantastic. But then I see, the reality of what's probably going to happen. And there's so many avenues like productivity. I'm not sold on productivity with AI, because we're potentially going to have, at least in the interim, 10 experts sitting around the room because they all are using ChatGPT. What does that do to the traditional expert in the room that has spent months or years gaining knowledge and information and has a viewpoint? Do they get drowned out? Do we constantly flip and flop between decisions because there's just everyone has a viewpoint now? I'm not sold on the productivity in the short term, but also what's it going to do to individuals who have spent a lot of time honing their skills and take pride in the work that they do, and now it can be done instantly with AI? Do we see a crisis of meaning and purpose at work? It's just so many rabbit holes you can go down with this. So I would definitely say generative AI and the future of automation.
Okay. Daniel, we are now on record here, audio and video as well. So if you could give us some prediction that we can check after 1 year or 2 years and see if you were right.
Okay. So my remit is more than 1 year. So let's go a couple of years out. And when I say these things, it's maybe not every company or every team, but I feel that we're reaching a tipping point with, qualifications required for jobs. I think with the difficulties in the labor market and attracting talent, having unnecessary credentials really puts people off, but also it makes it harder to hire and more costly. So I foresee that more and more companies, and some big companies, will drop degree requirements, and it maybe starts a chain reaction. Okay, I'll give you a second one. I feel that generative AI will really disrupt things within 2 or 3 years, but workplaces will be far behind. I feel that regulation will come in and will slow things down, and maybe that's the right thing to do. But the barrier to entry for individuals using generative AI tools, so job seekers, won't really be there. So I think there'll be big disruption in terms of how many applications someone receives or a company receives for a job. And a candidate could now apply to 100, 200 jobs, like jobs that actually match their credentials, and they could be worldwide. And the AI could potentially fill out the whole application for them. So the cost of application drops to zero. But maybe they then just drop out because they have so many options. What does that do to all the hiring processes? It really, really can be disruptive. But just end on a positive note. The serendipity of finding the right job for you as an individual is quite rare, because you don't even know what your best skills are, and you don't know where that job is in the world. And maybe you just miss it by a month or 2 months. And maybe they took a good person, but not the perfect person. I feel that eventually generative AI might, and machine learning and other established methods of AI might help match these skills and speed up the opportunities for people to find.
And broaden the horizon
exactly.
For the search.
So further afield, in terms of, I wasn't monitoring a job in Lithuania, I can now go there. Also, I didn't know I could be this thing. I have these skills, and I didn't know I could be this thing, which actually aligns quite closely with my skills. And also, I would never have put myself forward. If the AI is doing it for you, it's like it's your biggest sponsor. It's like pushing you to go for anything. So I'm excited by that.
Okay. So your number one prediction is that more companies will start hiring for skills, not for qualifications.
Yeah, and actually drop things like degrees where it's unnecessary.
Okay, and that will probably affect the education system and things like that.
It really has to change, and I'm not hating on it. Full disclosure, I have a degree. A personal story: my younger cousin just got her exam results, 18 years old. And her mum was distraught because she didn't get enough to go to university. I'm seeing her at a wedding next week, and I'm going to tell her it's going to be okay, and that maybe she should start an apprenticeship and go that way, get a head start. The problem I feel is university is too slow to adapt to the world of work. Now, there are ways around this. If they, just kind of tie in more with business and understand what, businesses are looking for, that could counteract some of the depreciation, I would say, in value of a degree. As more people get a degree, they become less rare, and maybe the cost of them goes down in terms of how people value them. So with falling populations as well, in Poland already we're seeing this, because in the last 20 years there's been a big exit to like move around Europe, but also birth rates have fallen. So there's far fewer people in higher education already. So if you keep these things, it's not going to work out for you. But university can get there if they align with companies.
So number one, hiring for skills and then changing educational systems probably.
Yeah.
And number two is disrupting job search process in good ways, you mentioned. So
well, good for the candidate.
For the candidates.
And
for the companies as well.
Well, okay, so right now, maybe if you only get 10 applications or 100 applications and they're all a similar profile of the same skill set, what do you need to change if you now get 1,000 and there are people from all different skill sets and background? How do you assess them together? How do you find the right people? So we have to kind of change our processes too. Otherwise, it might be a little bit overwhelming. And maybe it just needs a big bang and we see what happens after.
Yeah, but it will anyway be good for result, because you will get, just more resources to pick from. Okay, so I will follow up on if you're right on those two predictions.
In my calendar.
Yeah, me too. Okay, so thank you very much for this conversation, Daniel, and I hope to see you again in Lithuania.
Thank you. Ačiū.
Jūs klausite podcast'o Žmogiškieji iššūkiai. Kad nepraleistumėte naujų epizodų, kviečiame prenumeruoti laidos naujienlaiškį adresu žmogiškieji.lt. Podcast'ą prenumeruoti taip pat galite per Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher ir kitose platformose. Laidos partneris Audioteka verslui. Nuolatinio tobulėjimo kultūra jūsų organizacijoje. www.audiotekaverslui.lt